Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Touchline Talk with Odds Changer, where we will be discussing all the latest news and gossip from the Premier League, EFL and the rest of the world. As usual, I'm joined by football broadcaster and writer and general all-round man with his finger on the pulse, Dean Jones, to talk about all the latest gossip and news on the grapevine. Hi Dean, another exciting weekend of Premier League action. It was good to have it back after the international break.
It was, mate. Very welcome to see the clubs all back, even though it was all very strange guessing who was actually going to be available to play. Good weekend generally, unless you're Pep, I guess.
Yeah, not the way he wanted to celebrate his new contract that we talked about last week. Not the ideal result for them, going to Tottenham and losing 2-0 and not finding themselves off the pace in this Premier League title race. But you still expect City to bounce back and get back in that title race, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I definitely expect them to be in there. I think Pep signing that contract is one of the most significant things to happen this season, and it will shape, City's destiny for the next 2 years. Because losing him, the only way was down. This means that they can tie up the contracts of De Bruyne and Sterling, and really focus on the names in the next two transfer windows that they need to really rebuild the team from those days of Company and Fernandinho and Silva and Aguero. It's time for City 2.0. So let's see if Pep's up to the challenge and whether he can rise again.
Yeah, it's going to be a reset for Pep Guardiola, and I think it's a bit of a warning for maybe the rest of the squad at City there. If they're not up to it, I'm sure there'll be big changes. Maybe not this transfer window, but next summer that he'll be looking to transform City and rebuild them again. So it's going to be an interesting watch at that one. But one man who's doing an impressive rebuild of his own is Jose Mourinho at Tottenham. Celebrated his first year in charge at Spurs just recently as well, and celebrated it in style with that 2-0 win over City to put Tottenham top of the table as well. Mourinho, a lot of scepticism about him when he first arrived at Tottenham to replace Pochettino. But Dean, for me, has he won over those Spurs fans now?
Yeah, I mean, he's won over me as well, because I was one of those people that was very sceptical about him coming into Tottenham. I wasn't sure that he had it in him anymore, to be honest, to kind of get that reaction from players that we'd seen him do in the past. I thought that United sapped the life out of him, it seemed, and he was just such an angry man. But it seems like, he's got something going here. And I think that Tottenham, what was so important in those last days of Pochettino, they were totally drained. The Champions League final defeat was kind of the peak. They knew they couldn't get back to those heights, and the team just seemed drained of energy, drained of ideas. And it was the right time to change. I didn't think Mourinho would be the right man, but actually it's worked perfectly for him. He's done a really good job over the year. He's changed the mentality of the team. He's got Son and Kane working in tandem brilliantly. He's been tough on some players like Ndombele, and it seemed really harsh at one point, but actually it's really got the best out of him. And now those two really understand what they want from each other. He's built a midfield that you probably wouldn't have guessed would be the first choice in Højbjerg and Sissoko and Ndombele, but it's really, really strong. And it's really hard to score against Tottenham these days, which is obviously what Mourinho wants from his team. But equally, they can hit teams and score, like we saw in the Southampton games, a lot of goals when it really matters. And to have Gareth Bale as well in there as an impact player is just unreal. And it really does lift them to a new level. And they do seriously have a chance of silverware this season.
Yeah. Do you think he needs to bring some silverware to Tottenham? It's been such a long time since they won a trophy. I think the minimum he needs to do this season is get to a final, pick up a trophy, and who's not to say real serious title challengers now?
Yeah, I think it's obviously his ultimate ambition is to get trophies to Tottenham. Competing for the title was probably beyond his expectations even when he came in, although he'd love to have said he could do it. I don't think anyone really imagined a time when Liverpool or Man City would let up. But because this season is so weird and so unpredictable, it's there for the taking. And I think that in a season like this, you take each match in isolation. And that's what Jose Mourinho is really good at. I spoke last week about, someone like Mourinho is what England need, because you just manage match by match. And at the moment, the Premier League's kind of like a long cup competition, because there's no time to build up form. There's no time to get consistency. And it's just a game plan for each match. And Mourinho's done that. He's taken each game in isolation, and he's doing a really good job. And they're certainly, if they don't compete for the title, they're at least going to be in the top four.
Yeah, I think that's the minimum that Spurs could get this season, top four. But a bit like you, Dean, started the season, Mourinho was one of my first tips, maybe to first manager to lose his job. I thought things would come unstuck for him this season. He would probably fall out with Daniel Levy, but things seem to be going well off the pitch as well. Levy backed him in the transfer market, which many people probably didn't expect as well. So he's got all his signings, Jose. His whole demeanour's changed. He seems happier. As you can see from his Instagram posts. Is he following you yet, Dean? Or?
He's not, mate. No, I don't know if he knows I'm on there yet. So I'll probably just need to just send him a DM later on and make sure he knows where all the stories are at.
Exactly. He knows where to come for those big stories. But yeah, no, it's been a massive turnaround for Mourinho. He's starting to prove those critics wrong who thought he was a busted flush and everything else. But yeah, if he was to go and lead Tottenham to the title, it'd probably be one of the stories of the Premier League, I think, of all time.
Yeah, be up there with Leicester. It's that unexpected that Tottenham could go in the league. You know, there's been teams that you thought might have put in a push for the title. This wasn't the team that you thought was going to go and push for that title. But as I said, you know, if Liverpool do let their foot off, which look, they might not. They've just stuffed Leicester last night with their reserve team, so there's no real signs that Liverpool are going to let this title go. But if they do, Tottenham could be there waiting to pounce.
Yeah, Tottenham looking in good fettle right now, but we'll know more about them probably next weekend when they come up against Chelsea. So it's Jose up against Frank Lampard, both teams in the top three as well. So really looking forward to that game next weekend. Across North London, everything's not so rosy right now. Arsenal, after a bright start, coming a bit unstuck right now. I think one win in 5 games for Mikel Arteta. He's coming up to celebrating his 1-year anniversary at Arsenal after taking over last December. But despite all the fanfare, it's seemingly going wrong for Arteta right now. The battle to a goalless draw at Leeds, which was a good result considering they were down to 10 men. But for the majority of that game, even before the red card, Leeds were the better team, had the better chances. So some real concerns for Arsenal right now, just struggling for goals. I think it's nearly 8 hours of Premier League football without scoring a goal in open play. And there's a certain Mesut Ozil sat on the sidelines, not even getting a look in at Arsenal as well. Probably some Arsenal fans questioning that decision right now. Dean, what's your take on Arsenal and Arteta right now?
I think that he went in there with a job to kind of make them just make them really hard to beat and make them compete again. And he did that. You know, last season they won the FA Cup. They started to get that winning mentality, and so that now exists. And I think that they do have a resolve that wasn't there before. Like even yesterday, you can at least say, well, there was a determination and a spirit there from Rob Holding, from Gabriel, from Kieran Tierney that teams gone by, it wasn't there. You didn't trust them. You didn't think they could really dig in. And it does seem like they have a personality about them now whereby they at least won't lose a game like that. So I do think that that's a positive. I don't think Arteta's under pressure as such. I think that the Arsenal board have absolute faith and trust in him to oversee this rebuild, lead Arsenal to good times. Don't forget, they changed his role to first team manager. That's how much they trust him. Like Arteta's not just coaching now. He's overseeing things pretty much like Arsene Wenger used to do. They didn't really want to go down that route again. Arteta's forced them into that because he just has such a firm grip on so many different parts of the club. So they've restructured because of Mikel Arteta. So they're not now going to rip all that up and get rid of him. It's obviously a concern that they've gone almost 8 hours without scoring. It's a concern that Aubameyang's not getting in the positions, not having the shots that he was scoring from last season. But it'll come again. I think that the other thing with Arteta is he's now really working out who he can trust and who he can't trust. Well, one player you can't trust, it clearly is Nicolas Pepe. Absolutely losing his head in a game when you really, really just need him to be the game changer for all the right reasons. And he does something stupid like that. And you do wonder, why am I going to call on you? If you're going to do something like that, I just can't be putting you in for Premier League matches.
Yeah, it's very odd behaviour from Pepe, who during the international break was speaking in French media saying he wasn't getting enough minutes under Arteta, that he couldn't perform at his best. He's definitely not going to get those minutes now after that ridiculous red card that he picked up at Elland Road as well. So, yeah, I think he's going to have to do a lot to win back the faith of Mikel Arteta over the next few weeks in training, because he's let his side down and he let his manager down at the weekend as well. But just some interesting reading I'm seeing from Arsenal is the last 4 managers for Arsenal Premier League, points after 29 games, you got Unai Emery had 57 points, Bruce Rioch 48, Arsene Wenger 48, Arteta's there on 46. So that'd be a bit of a concern for me, seeing the records. I know we don't want to judge him too early, but there was a lot of people singing Arteta's praises, so maybe it deserves a bit of criticism as well with that points record.
Yeah, possibly. I just think, like, in the modern game, I think people look at it a bit deeper than just points return, and you look at the philosophy of the team and the setup, and you just have a bit more belief about what Arteta might be trying to build here than you might have done under Unai Emery. I also think it helps that the fans at least know a bit more about Arteta, and it probably gives him a bit of breathing space and a bit more time to really get things going. There have been some really good Arsenal performances in his time there. As I say, and he's had some success with cup competitions as well. So he knows how to get a tune out of this team. I think they're probably one or two players short of what he wants as well. Won't surprise me in January if he goes out and signs another midfielder. So I think that Arsenal fans probably trust him a little more than they trusted Emery.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case. Houssem Aouar of Lyon might be that midfield target who they came very close to signing in the summer transfer window. But again, he will be big money to get in January as well. And I imagine Lyon won't be too keen to sell him either. But we talked about Tottenham and Mourinho, what the minimum would be for them this season. For Arsenal, is it similar, top four, or do you think that's maybe being a bit too
I think that's too ambitious. Yeah, I think that's too ambitious from what we've seen anyway. I think just top six is probably going to be more realistic for them. I don't know if that's what they'll be happy with, but I think when you look across the board this season, they're not in the best four teams in this league. They might not be in the best six, to be honest, but at least they can have the ambition to get into that top six and believe that they can get there if Aubameyang finds his shooting boots.
Yeah, they could do with Aubameyang getting back to his old form quickly. Otherwise, Arsenal TV is going to be an interesting watch over the next few weeks ahead of Christmas if results do not improve quickly. But talking of ambition, that takes us on to Newcastle United, who've been heavily criticised for the lack of ambition they've shown in recent games. Newcastle fans not happy with that performance at the weekend against Chelsea, losing 2-0. It wasn't really unexpected, but I think it was probably the manner of the defeat. They didn't really press Chelsea, just let Chelsea dominate the game. And 2-0 was probably not a fair reflection on the scoreline, for Chelsea dominated the game. Things were meant to be different for Newcastle this season, Dean. All that talk of the takeover possibly happening, that failed to materialise, and it seems a bit of a sense of deja vu around the club. What's your whole take on Newcastle and Steve Bruce?
Yeah, it really is deja vu. We see this all the time, don't we, from Newcastle? We're back here again. Bruce out has been trending on social media. So here we go. But I think importantly for Steve Bruce is that while fans might be losing faith in him, the people running the club right now are sticking with him. I think they do have some sympathy for the situation he's been managing in. I think the fact that he did have to grin and bear it when there was all that talk of the takeover and who was going to be taking his job. It's been a really difficult year for Steve Bruce, and he's just got his head down and got on with it. I think he's one of the more likeable managers in the Premier League, and I think he's got a good relationship there. The understanding is that for now he's carrying on. He hasn't really, he's had some backing, there's no doubt about that, but I'm not sure he's had the level of backing that he might have got if there was more stability around the club and they really knew what the direction was going forward. So I think that that's probably what's going to help him out for the short term, at least. I don't know how long Steve Bruce can stay in this job, but I do think that he's going to get a little bit of time to try and turn it around.
Yeah, like you said, we've mentioned before in previous episodes, lack of fans is probably helping Steve Bruce right now. Home fans at Newcastle, we all know they can quickly turn on their managers and the players if things aren't going right. Very passionate crowd up at Newcastle, but that's 5 defeats in 7 home games. I know that's in front of no fans, but I think that's a worrying sign for Newcastle. I think they're okay in the table right now. 8 points clear the drop zone, 11 points. That's a really bright start, but would you be worried about another relegation fight this season for them?
There are so many bad teams that they'll probably be okay. They've got Callum Wilson, like when he's fit, you couldn't rely on him. St. Maximan will come up with moments of magic that get you out of a hole. They have shown as well, like defensively, that they've put in some good performances at times. And I think that Bruce has even talked that up quite a bit. So I don't think they're in danger of going down now, no, because I think that there are probably 5 or 6 teams that will be stuck down there for the whole season. And Newcastle probably won't quite fall into that pack.
Yeah, I think they'll be okay come the end of the season. Got enough quality in that squad to avoid a relegation fight as well. An interesting story last week. Dean came out in the papers, a few eyebrows raised when it was revealed that Burnley boss Sean Dyche was in line to make millions of pounds from the sales of some academy players, the likes of Dwight McNeil, who's been a big money target for a number of clubs in the Premier League. I think Dyche has got this development clause in his contract, meaning he is due 5% development fee if any academy players are sold under his tutelage. So people were coming out thinking this was a surprise. It wasn't for me. I think it's maybe not a regular occurrence with some managers, but I know if some managers have special clauses in their contracts with everything else. I know Ian Holloway had a slice of percentage fees at Blackpool. I know Steve Bruce and Sam Allardyce have had similar when they've been at clubs before, that they're due just like a bonus payment for me. So I don't see any real problem in it. If the clubs are willing to put these in the manager's contracts, I don't think it's any real concern. What about you?
No, totally. There's nothing illegal about it. And it is unusual. And I think that with someone like Sean Dyche, who's such a big part of Burnley and what they've been able to do anyway, it kind of makes sense that if he's willing to, bring Dwight McNeil through and give him the opportunity in the first team and then get him, to the stage where there are big clubs actually looking at signing him for big money, then he probably kind of deserves a cut of that. I can see his argument for why he would feel that it's not that strange. So no, it's unusual because, as you say, like most clubs just don't talk about having this clause in there. But Dyche is a big part of these players' lives, and I think that he puts everything into this job. And I think that Burnley just appreciate the fact that if they're going to get through on a small budget, if they're going to give players in the academy hope of getting to the first team, then there might be some incentive for Dyche to actually test them and give them that chance as well. Because otherwise, it's going to be like, well, what's in it for me to give these kids a chance, which could potentially lose me my job, when I can just push to try and sign someone from somewhere else who's proven. So, I don't think it's a bad thing, to be honest. I think it might even be a good thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Dean. I think there's nothing wrong with this at all. I think it's a good thing for clubs as well, because we all know how managers lose their jobs so quickly these days. It might make clubs not to push the exit button on managers as well if they've got these clauses in the contracts as well. And we all know there's so many complex clauses in managers and players' contracts these days. So many different things to go around. But yeah, if a manager does a good job with a player, why should he not get rewarded? I think it's fair enough. If Sean Dyche has helped Dwight McNeil and others develop and become possible England internationals, he should probably benefit from that, because he's played a big role in that as well. So no problems for me on that score. And I'm sure up and down the country in a lot of managers' contracts, there's probably similar clauses in there as well. Talking of clubs and managers, just one club in the Championship still without a manager. That's Derby County. Wayne Rooney was in interim charge at the weekend for the 1-0 defeat to Bristol City. So he's not done himself any great chance of maybe getting that job on a permanent basis. He's now drifted out to 8-1 in the bookies, with the big mover seemingly being Big Sam Allardyce. He's now 7-2, second favourite behind Rafa Benitez. Big Sam, would he be a good fit for Derby, Dean?
Oh, I don't know. If Derby want to go, it depends what route you want to go down. We said before, like when you're taking over a club, you can go for Rooney and you get all the headlines and you give someone the chance to break through, or you just go down a tried and tested route, find someone that's had success at this level before and try and go there. So, of course, Allardyce ticks boxes. There's no doubt about that. I don't know if I was going to be going into a club and trying to build something that's the route that I personally would be going down. But we'll see. As it stands right now, I think that Wayne Rooney and Liam Rosenior and the guys working with them have an opportunity to get this job. There's no doubt that, like, if they do well, they're going to put the club in a situation where they have to give it to them. We've seen it so many times with interim managers. The reason they become full-time managers is because you just force it, and you do so well that you can't be overlooked. So if Rooney's going to get the job, he has to do very, very well early on. Obviously, losing the first game doesn't fit in with that, but he now has probably 2 or 3 games to really make that mark. It's very difficult in that first game to put too much into the team. You can only change the mentality of a dressing room so much within 3 or 4 days. Rooney is talking about making things simple again, but he's also talking about his ambition. He wants this job. He wants to follow people like Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard into management. He's got a path to go all the way to the top. And I think that he would love this job. He would love to be Derby manager. So he'll put everything into it, and he'll try to make himself basically just in a position that they have to give it to him. That's his task over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, results will dictate what happens with Rooney and his managerial ambitions with Derby. Interesting few weeks coming up for the club, sitting rock bottom of the championship right now. So that's maybe why Big Sam's maybe coming into their consideration, someone who's got the experience, the know-how to get them out of trouble right now and everything else. And for me, I could see maybe Big Sam going in there with Wayne Rooney working alongside him and learning the ropes in the managerial thing. And something I heard last week as well, which maybe added fuel to the fire of Big Sam returning to management, was Sammy Lee, his trusted assistant, had told somebody that he had to turn down a role somewhere else because he was getting ready to go back into management with Big Sam somewhere. It didn't mention where, but maybe this talk of Derby could add to that as well. So maybe we could have Big Sam back in English football for the first time since 2018 after his departure from Everton. So just imagine that, Championship fans. Big Sam and Tony Pulis back in football, battling it out at the wrong end of the table. And some interesting football to watch there as
well. Beautiful.
The Championship figures will be going through the roof. But yeah, I think if Big Sam was to go in there, I think he would sort Derby out. And Rooney could definitely learn under worse managers than that. So one to keep an eye on, definitely that Big Sam move, possibly to Derby as well. But yeah, that's us for this week. Thanks for joining us again, and tune in next week for more Touchline Talk, and we'll see you then.